for editors at the Lancet Regional Health Americas. And it's a pleasure for me to be with you guys today. And so please, Taisa, take it out.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much for organizing this 2 webinar series. If you were here in our previous webinar, welcome back. And if not, my name is Thaisa Vila. Together with Gustavo, we are editors at the Lancet Regional Health Americas. And we'll talk today in the second part of the series focused on using generative AI in the peer review process. So before we start, just a quick agenda of what we expect to achieve today at this webinar. I will start over with some overview of the peer review model, where we are, what we do currently. We'll discuss a little bit possible problems and where AI and generative AI could fit in this process as it is now. I'll get into some limits and ethical considerations as well. And I will then turn over to Gustavo, who will go more deeply in where we are, our guidelines, some real world examples to illustrate what we're talking about. And we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end, because I think this is the part where we learn together. And again, a quick disclaimer. As of last time, we used ChatGPT Enterprise, which is a closed space that we have access through Elsevier, a company that both of us are full-time employees, as a further disclosure. And the outputs were revised, and we take full responsibility for what's in the slides. So before we talk about any AI, I'm going to say expect a step back for us to reflect on what is the peer review process. And I think that will be very important for us to then understand better why the limits are what they are, where they are, and the reasons behind it. So the peer review process, most of you are familiar with, but it starts with your submission. So you submit your manuscript to a journal that you selected, and it goes to an editor who does a first assessment of that, usually validating that it's within the scope of the journal, that it answers a valid research question that is interesting and novel. But ultimately, the way that our system works at this point is that this editor is not the sole person evaluating your paper, and it will resource to what we call their peers. So that's what the peer reviewer is. So the peer reviewer is actually a central piece in the process, as we know and as we do right now, because those are the ultimate resources for specific knowledge for the editor. Those are the people contributing to improve the manuscript and tailoring the contribution to the field that manuscript can make. And they are also the pillar that is supporting and guiding the editorial team to make the best decision. So what the peer reviewers are is that they're a set of experts, and they are trusted because they will be able to assess that manuscript, not only if it's ethically conducted, but what's the contribution, what's the level of advance, and all that, because they have the field knowledge. And I'm reinforcing this many times because I think that's the core of why the process is sustained the way that it is. So then the comments go back to the editor, and the editor can make an educated decision validated by their that specific peers into the manuscript. But since they are so central and so important for this, and they are the base of the knowledge and the resource that we use, there is also a problem, because they are people, and they are a finite pool of people that you can resource to make those decisions. And that's why we come to the peer review crisis. And many of you probably experience multiple invitations to revise papers every week. And there's only so much one can do. And there's only so many people we can invite. And there is an additional problem to the peer review process, which is a structural bias. So we are biased to invite, one, the people we already know, and two, what is perceived as trustworthy. And there is a unperceived bias to invite reviewers from the global north. So we end up with a limited pool, a selected pool, and not necessarily a diverse pool of revisions. And that's actually validated by research. So this paper looked at the pressure on reviewers, and this is in physical sciences, but we're probably going to get similar things in our medical sciences as well. And in this particular question, where they evaluated how pressure or strain those researchers felt to accept invitations to revise, the authors from the United States and Europe, they felt much more that they responded more that they received too many requests, while the people in the global south, if we can say it, they felt like that they could contribute a little bit more. So this is just to put a perspective on the two sides of the problem that we have. But it is a crisis, and the way that the system is, it is unsustainable. And we've been questioning ourselves, how can we improve the peer review system for many years? And because we're in the generative AI era, we also asked ourselves, should we consider AI-assisted peer review? And this is a fair question. Should we be delegating this task to our AI tools, for example? So last year, is it last year already? Yes, last year, the Lancet Global Health put out a provocative and interesting editorial in which they questioned the readers whether artificial intelligence-based peer reviewing could be an opportunity or a threat. And the bottom line of the discussion here is that we all it's unquestionable that large language models and generative AI can be a powerful tool to close the language gap. We know that you can use that on your own manuscripts to improve readability and to close that gap. But is there any value, or could we have any benefit from using AI to assist with the peer review process? Would it actually deliver this better efficiency, fairness, and accuracy that's promised? Like, will it remove any bias from, for example, it doesn't know who that author is, as if a peer would know, so it's going to be more fair. But by delegating it, are we just removing this central pillar of our system that is the one that we use to make sure that we ensure quality and trustworthiness in what's getting out of the peer review process? So if you substitute that central pillar by generative AI, are we actually moving forward in the field? And that's the question. And I don't have the answer, but some people are trying to answer this. So this paper came out last month in Nature again. And it's a little bit further than what we're discussing here. So this is an end-to-end automation of AI research, which means that here, what the authors did is that they created, the AI goes from research question to publication. So the machine here created the research question, did the experiment, wrote the manuscript, did the peer review, and submitted to publication, right? And it's a very interesting read. I recommend. There are many caveats. And one thing that I will point out is that their peer review actually did similar or even better than the human peer review in many of the accuracy evaluations that they did in the overall assessment. But then in their limitations, I also want to point out to the caveats that they identified, which are that ultimately the system generated a naive and underdeveloped idea. It did propose wrong experiments to answer the question. It had multiple errors in the tables and the figures that it generated, hallucinations and inaccuracy in citations. So just to point that we are evolving really fast with the technology, and we'll probably change a lot of the things the way that we do. But at this point, those are the limitations. Down dog. Those are the limitations that we still have. But this is far to one side. What I'm what we're probably discussing here is whether in the middle way we can use AI to assist the peer review. So we're not delegating the entirety of the peer review process to the machine, but we're using it to help us do it faster, better, or just written better. And that is a fair question, but it's also quite, we know the answer because we know that more than half of the peer reviewers are already using AI in peer review. And the problem is that they are often doing it against the guidance from the publishers. And that might be just a disregard, not knowing, or yeah, ignoring it. It's still, most of those who did say that they are using peer review AI in peer review, they use it, like 60% use it to improve the reporting, their final reporting writing. So they are still doing the evaluation, but using the AI to improve the writing of the report. But we cannot look away from 30% of people using it to analyze the findings. 20% of them using it to evaluate the methodology of the paper. And this means that you need to upload the entirety of the paper to your tool. And that's the point that actually we have to ask ourselves. So it's not about are we going to or are we using AI in scholarly publishing? Because we are. But the point is this use that we are doing still compatible with the confidentiality, accountability, and the scientific judgment that we expect from each of those moments in the peer review process? So for example, last time in the first webinar of this series, we discussed at length what you as an author can do with your own paper before submission and how AI can be very useful for self-checking, for checking against guidelines, completeness, and with a full oversight and disclosure of what you're doing. At the peer review level, under the current guidelines, and I'm here just speaking from the Lancet and Elsevier, we should not be using it peer review AI for anything related to the manuscript that you receive to provide a peer review. And I'll get to that in my next slide. So just to highlight that throughout that that course of the peer review that I was talking about in the beginning, as an author, there are some limits, but you can still use it for a lot of things. And at the other end, as an editor, there are also secure and audible tools that you might be allowed to use for. So for example, internally, we have closed space at Elsevier, and we are using a lot of AI embedded tools to check integrity, check for plagiarism, to find reviewers that are most compatible with each paper. And a lot of that is being implemented in the workflows of the journals. So there are different levels of scrutiny across that path. And the reason behind this is relies on 2 points that we stressed a lot in our first webinar as well. Uh, authorship property rights and secure environments. So basically, why are we allowing authors to use, editors to use, but not the reviewer to use it? And that's because when you are the author, you're dealing with your own content. So it's your own responsibility whether you are uploading it to an open space, whether you are sharing your unpublished data, and you make an educated decision on whether you should or should not be doing that. When you are the editor, you might have access to your license tools that allow you to do that in a safe way, in a trusted way, and knowing that anything that you're sharing is not going to be used to train or not going to be stored. But when you are a peer reviewer, you receive that document under a confidential agreement that you would treat that as a confidential document, therefore sharing it with any third party. And that means that if you have access to a closed environment, you may be able to do some of those checks. But if you don't have access to a closed environment and sharing it in the open space means that you are sharing it with a third part, which is not part of that agreement. So this is sort of why you have different allowances for different parts of the process. There are lots of things that we can discuss about each and every part of this. And another disclaimer that I didn't do in the beginning, but it's very important to make, and we made it in the first webinar, is that today is Thursday, the 16th of 2026. And if you're watching a recorded version of this webinar, several of our guidelines might change because we are discussing this in a changing environment, in a moving field, and a lot of what is allowed and not allowed is being revised and rediscussed at the publisher level, at the reviewer level, and so on. So what I'll hand over to Gustavo to do next is kind of go into what are those limits that I'm referring to, where we are now, and why are we putting those checks at this point.
Thanks, Thaisa. Very interesting presentation. Well, we know that AI is now embedded in multiple tools, and the models are evolving a lot. So we have been using the tool since its launch, and for sure, for many applications now, we have much more confidence. For instance, checking data, results, metrics. It's not just a tool to improve the grammar. But as we editors, it's quite difficult to be sure that a peer reviewer uses the AI, but we have an impression that sometimes it's too long or superficial, makes always the same comments, not very deep detail in the methodology. So, and Thaisa said we have many recommendations for what a peer reviewer or an author should do. So this is what I'm trying to show in my next slides, and also a couple of examples of tools and journals that have been using AI for peer review. Next slide, please. So from the author side, as Thaisa said, you can use AI for multiple applications, improving grammar, checking if your paper is in accordance with the journal guideline, reporting guidelines like consort, doing a checklist. But during the peer review, you cannot upload your manuscript that is, non-published material in a system that is open and could be used to train models. So every publishers have their own guidelines. I have prepared the table summarizing that. So next slide, please. Every time that we send an invitation for a potential peer reviewer, you can see by the print of the email that it's written that you cannot use AI to assist the peer review process, even if you write your own peer review and then use the model to improve the grammar, because most often the peer reviewers feedback have parts of the paper that should not be uploaded in an AI model. Next slide, please. So here's a brief summary of a couple of publishers. Elsevier, for instance, it's very restrictive. It makes clear that you cannot use generative AI to assist the peer reviewer, peer reviewing, so you cannot upload even parts of the manuscript in a ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and so on. Regarding the grammar, we know that there are some tools now that are embedded in the systems. So these tools would perhaps be used just to improve the grammar, but not uploading your manuscript in that tool. We see that the other publishers almost all have no restriction of using generative AI to analyze a manuscript. Some publishers are including in-house tools to support the preview, and we see that this perhaps will be the tendency of the industry. So in order to provide some assistance to the peer reviewers, make it easier, the process, but keeping safe to the author's work, perhaps in the editorial manager systems, we will see tools to support the peer reviewing process. But for now, most of the publishers say very clear that you cannot upload a manuscript to support your peer reviewing process, even though, as they demonstrated, apparently more than half of the peer reviewers are using AI. And I will share a couple of interesting examples. Next slide, please. So yeah, many peer reviewers, authors, they ask why. I mean, everybody's using AI. Why cannot use AI to support my peer review? It's so time consuming. Sometimes I have, many invitations. Sometimes the paper have 10, 20 pages and so on. So basically, because concerns with proprietary rights, data privacy with the authors, we know that these models are evolving a lot, but they still hallucinate. They can make incomplete evaluations of the paper. These models for sure have bias, and they are not accountable for the reviewing judgment process. And in the previous webinar, Thaisa and I discussed also the impact of prompt injection. So perhaps the author can write in their manuscript in the PDF with colors of the text that a human being cannot detect, but these informations can include prompts for the model to positively evaluate your manuscript. So the feedback would be totally different and interfere with the peer reviewer and the editor decision-making process. So these are some of the biggest concerns regarding peer review and AI. Next slide, please. So some ideas that we think could be quite interesting for authors before they submit their papers. So, you can use AI to see and support the reporting process. So many journals, as the Lancet requests the authors provide reporting guidelines. If it's a trial, you have a specific reporting guideline. If it's a retrospective study, you have a different reporting guideline. This can be time consuming, so you can use AI to support this process. It's quite time consuming to compare protocols of trials, for instance, and the manuscripts. So these tools now can be very helpful to compare protocols and articles, for sure, to improve the grammar, language, readability, and also perhaps criticizing your paper. What are the main limitations of my research? How I could avoid often desk rejections, like the methods are not provided with details, or missing ethical reporting, and so on. So these are a couple of ideas that an author could leverage AI to improve their publishing process. Next slide, please. And there are many tools beyond the typical models like ChatGPT and Claude that are being developed specifically for scientists. So I do not have any connections with this company. It's a startup from Israel that supposedly is done by science, for science. So basically, you can evaluate a manuscript there, but you do have to upload your full manuscript. I haven't read their policy, so I recommend taking a look if they do use your manuscript to train their model before uploading. But basically, I did a couple of tests. This next slide, please, Thais. I got, random preprints from the archives and uploaded in the system to see how it works. It takes a couple of minutes and it evaluates the manuscript. So it provides like major and minor issues with the paper, but also what is new. So I found it quite interesting. I uploaded a couple of manuscripts that I found interesting in the meta archives, and they compare the claims of the paper with what is really new, comparing with the literature, and also major and minor issues of the paper. So, perhaps these dedicated tools could be indeed more interesting than, generative AI models for general purpose like Claude and ChatGPT, but you do have to understand also the policies of such tools before uploading your paper. For checking, for instance, preprints that you are interested is also no problem because it's already available online. Next slide. So I wanted to share this quite interesting case. So there's this journal from New England Journal of Medicine AI, that run a pilot. So basically, they offer for some authors that submitted their papers a fast track. So, but this fast track, the reviewers could use AI for their peer review. So it was quite interesting to see that they managed to provide the feedback in about 7 days. So this is a typical fast track that is quite difficult for an editor to provide, and also for sure for the peer reviewers. But in this case, they controlled the prompts, the models, and both the authors and the reviewers and the editors were aware that AI was using with human oversight of the process. So yeah, perhaps this is something that if the authors decide to include as a possible option, and also the peer reviews could be also something that we will see in the future, more journals adapting to that. But as Thaisa said, the reviewers would need to have access to a closed environment AI model to handle the manuscript safely. I would say authors would like to have their papers revised in 7 days for sure, right? And for editors, also, it's great to have these fast, but only with a greater number of papers, we as editors would understand if in fact the quality of the preview is keeping the same or is declining. Next slide, please. The next case that I wanted to share I saw, at least in my social media, lots of discussions on that. So basically a conference on machine learning, quite popular one, I think is the biggest in the field, offered for their conference two previewing process for their papers and abstracts from the conference. And basically, when you in this conference, you also have to revise abstracts and papers. So you could decide two policies. One, no AI. The second one, you use AI to support a peer review, but you had to disclose the use. And basically what the conference did, as I understood, is they included informations in the abstracts to catch if the reviewers were using AI and link it to their policy decision. And if there was a mismatch, so basically they said that no AI, used AI without disclose, they had their paper abstract rejected. And we saw almost 500 rejected by this policy. So I'm not saying or supporting this strategy. I would include such a strategy in our paper, but this highlights how complicated the situation is currently, because many reviewers are using AI without disclosure, and we have to understand how a publisher, a journal, or a conference could, prevent this to happen with the non-published material. So quite an interesting case, and this was highlighted in Nature last month. Next slide, please. So yeah, some couple of points that we need to have, either to implement AI, to run pilots, or being a peer reviewer. We need for sure a safe environment regarding the model, so we are not uploading non-published material without the author's consent in a model that would later use the material to train the models. We need a specific policy saying how AI is using. We have to, as publishers and editors and authors, we have to be able to audit which prompts were used, which models for each parts of the process were used. We need to determine in which applications AI will be used. And for sure, we will still need the expert assessing the peer review process, and a long time monitoring with performance indicators, the quality of the preview, the rates of accuracy, errors, and if in fact the authors are getting great comments that actually improve their manuscripts and their research. Next slide, please. So just summarizing what you should not or should do. So you should not include a manuscript, a supplementary material, or figures into public large language models, generative AI models. You cannot use these tools to polish confidential review reports, or use these models to evaluate automatically novelty, validity, or recommend whether to accept or reject a paper. But you as an author could do to, improve your paper, facilitate the submission process. And of course, as a peer reviewer, you can use these tools to, as we use Google, to look for other papers, to check methods, statistics, approaches, and so on. I think this was my last slide. Yeah, so I think now we have time for questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Gustavo and Place. I think that your presentation was really helpful to clarify how we think about it, this large language models or AI during the peer review. Right now, we are open for questions. I don't think that we have questions from the public yet. So while you were talking, I was thinking about, my biggest concern as an author now and also reviewer is like, if we encourage the use of AI for writing purposes, like to help write and to help polish our language and everything, but then we don't have an option for the peer review process, do you think that this will create maybe like a bottleneck where you will have a lot of papers but little options for developing this? I don't know. I want to hear your thoughts. Like, what do you think? Like, maybe you don't have. I mean, like, everything is so new that we are, trying to do the best that we can with such a short amount of time. But I want to hear your opinions on this.
No, I think you're right on spot. I think that if we don't adapt fast enough, that's what we end up doing is creating an even more unbalanced environment as well, because then you remove the barrier for the authors, the language barrier, for example, but you don't remove it from the reviewer side. So you end up with a lot of papers that will be evaluated by the same people. And we're not, making it sort of like solving the crisis that I mentioned, that we have too many papers and the same amount of like, we didn't increase the number of researchers as much as the number of papers that are being produced. So we'll have to adapt in a way. I think that what Frontiers is doing, providing the environment, is probably the direction that most of the industry will go. So you can provide the tool and you enable that process to happen in the safe environment. I would think that this is the direction that we're going.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I think that we have oh, I'm sorry, Gustavo, please go ahead.
No, just, yeah, we see that the number of submissions and the outputs of scientific journals are increasing. And for sure, AI is making the process of, finishing a paper to submit faster. But, and Thaisa said, this is putting much more pressure in the peer reviewers. And we want to keep the same quality of the papers and the peer review process.
Thank you. I think that we have a special guest, Manuel Ramirez Sea, who is the director of the INCAP's Research Center for the Prevention of Chronic Diseases. And I think Manuel has some comments of questions. Please, Manuel, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you for this interesting presentation. And when you were presenting, I asked ChatGPT about AI apps for peer review process in scientific papers in which the confidentiality is kept. And this is the answer. Give me 3 categories. The first one is dedicated AI peer review platforms, and mention 3 examples: Review It, the Scholars Review, and Paper Wizard. These tools can simulate reviewer comments but they do not replace domain expert judgment. That's the answer. Then the second type of category is academic writing AI with strong confidentiality controls. And the examples are Trinca AI and Thesify or something like that. It says that it's very useful for internal peer review before submission and checking reporting quality. And the third category are the general AI tools that do not upload manuscripts to public AI tools. That's the answer from ChatGPT. So I don't know if you know about these AI peer review platforms and how the privacy that is kept there or not, and if they are like allowed by journals, or this will be like the next step of reviewing your rules or for peer reviewers. But anyway, I just have that. I just did that, and I don't know what are your thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, Manuela. I think that it's what you did is like what many people may do, and question like initially ChatGPT was something that just predicts the next word, right? But nowadays people are using it as another alternative for Google, right? So instead of putting my questions to Google, I just go there and ask ChatGPT. At the first version of ChatGPT, it will hallucinate, it will create something like out of the blue. But nowadays they have like this search option, and they can go there and look within Google to give you an answer. Of course, like every time that we ask the same question, we may have different answers. But I don't know if Taisa and Gustavo had any opinions on this.
I think I don't know personally any of the outputs that came out from your search, but from the explanation seems similar to what Gustavo presented for the KED, which is basically a platform that does a pre-peer review. So you check your own paper before submitting. So you already responded to what can come up from the peer review process. And those seem to be useful tools, but as you mentioned, and they claim that they are safe, but it's always important that you read how they operate and if they store your data. And maybe they don't share, but they store, or they don't share, but they train internally their models. And then again, I guess it goes back to what I said. If you as an author, you make that decision for your own paper is one thing. But what's important to separate is that as a reviewer, you cannot make that what ethically you should not be making this decision for the author. So I think this is the main difference here, is that when you're making a decision about your own content and when you're making a decision about someone else's content. And that's why it's so important to figure out how we're going to solve this when we're dealing with a third-party document.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think from the author side, it's quite useful. It can save a lot of time, and that's rejections and improving your paper in many ways. But from the peer review process, I mean, if we wanted a peer reviewer to, analyze your paper with ChatGPT, I mean, we can do it ourselves, right? We want the expert, the local specialist to give their perspective in the paper, not a generative AI to analyze that. So I think the peer reviewer should focus more on the paper, not be very concerned to have this very long analysis of the paper, pointing also grammar issues and so on. So these the journals can do now with AI tools, improving a paper and analyzing some general aspects of a research. So I think the reviewer should now focus pretty much in the expertise part of the paper, because the other general aspects, it's much easier to do it now in-house.
Thank you so much, Gustavo. There is a question for you from Constanza that said, like, have you seen a measurable change in review quality or style since AI tools became more common?
Well, the overall improvement, I don't see much difference, but because, prior to this adoption of AI, we still have, peer reviewers that were superficial, not adding much value. Now we also have that, but sometimes we have super length peer reviewers done in 15 minutes that, doesn't add much value as well. So the overall quality, I don't think changed so much, but we do have some that are, even though are not short, doesn't add much in deep perspective. But prior to AI, we also have, peer reviewers that were not super helpful for our decision-making process. Perhaps Isa could also give more her perspective because she's an actor longer than me. But now her webcam is turned off, so I don't know if she had any connection problem. Perhaps we can move on to the next question.
Maybe.
And see
Sure,
that
sure,
she
sure.
can.
Sure. Another question that it was part of related the one that I started, that is like, we as an editors encourage or allow authors the use of AI to improve readability and language of the work. To do
Yeah.
that, authors will likely upload their manuscript into an AI tool. However, we editors discourage authors and reviewers to upload unpublished manuscript into an AI tool. How we can reconcile that?
Okay, that's a very good question. We know that it's not all institutions that have their AI closed systems. We, as editors, we interact lots with researchers. So many institutions already provide for their faculty. So these closed systems that support a lot their work. Also from companies, from pharma companies, they have these closed systems. So it's very safe. But if a reviewer or author does not have access to that, so you cannot full update the manuscript. You just have to use embedded tools that are safer to improve only the grammar. For instance, now Word from Microsoft has a Copilot. I think this could be also an option. I don't know exactly how it works, but potentially these plugins, AI tools could support the improve of grammar and readability improve without including the manuscript in an open environment.
Oh, thank you so much. I think that your proposal of having, the journal proposing like the tool or the environment, I'm imagining such like that you have a chat box in one side, that you have like, the
Yes.
PDF, and you can start talking with the PDF, and to know,
Yes.
making the question to see, because like also like, as English is not my first language, I can get like a different perspective from the sentence that somebody else. So maybe I can ask for clarify, or try to see a different angle of this sentence, to see if I am catching the author's intention. For example, that would be something helpful without trying to rely on that direct ChatGPT or something. I think that will be really useful for us as reviewers to have that, and to have that environment. I think that would be great. Of course, like nowadays, I mean, like if you have a computer good enough, you can run your own model locally. Like, for example, you can start play with Elm Studio and download, the new Gemma 4 model from Google, and try to play around. But of course, for that, you need like a computer, like, with enough RAM and stuff. So I think that is not going to be for the majority of the people, but it's good to know from your perspective
Yes.
what we
Yes.
can
It's
see the
also,
future.
yeah, open source
I think,
LLMs would indeed support.
yeah, one important point from your points, Kevin, is that there are two sides of it that I think we can sort of use this momentum to do better. One is for sure provide what's needed for the reviewer. So if we want the peer review, just if we're trying to keep the system as it is and rely on the expert's opinion, but also assess back what actually should we be expecting from that reviewer. Because if we have a safe environment, a lot of that can be done safely, and we can trust the models to assess checklist-based things. So we can sort of rethink, and this is my personal perspective of this whole thing, what I think we as editors will take out of this whole mess is that perhaps we will expect less from the reviewer, but more unique. So you're not assessing that paper on any parameter that a model could do, but you will give me the perspective that the model can never do, which is your expertise, your experience in the field, your knowledge, and all the accumulated experience that you have. And that's what I expect from everything else that's related to the tax and checks and balances and all that. We all know that the model will do. So I think, it will make it easier for the reviewer because the expectation is more direct. And the second thing is also our general education on how to use all this.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I think that we have a road ahead of us that it's a long road, but hopefully we can get the best out of this. Yes, I don't know if there's any other questions in the chat. Review. No, I think that no, there's no any other question. So with that, I think that we can conclude our webinar. Thank you so much, Taisa and Gustavo, for your comments and input. I think that this is a really hot topic that we are all trying to find our way. It's everything is new. Everyone is trying to get the best of AI, and we're learning on the go. So thank you so much for your inputs, and I look forward to staying in contact. Thank you so much for Inca for giving us this platform to speak, and I look forward to stay in touch.
Thank you so much
Thank
for the
you.
invitation.
Bye-bye. Gracias.
Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.